All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first Comic Caper. Well, no, Legends of the Arrowverse annual. Did so many of these this summer. I am Phil. Lilith is here, and of course, been looking for big guests this summer. So of course, we're talking Flash. I don't think it gets bigger than Mr. Mark Waid. Hello, sir.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Seems I think it's been a few years since we chatted. It doesn't seem that long, but after, I think the last year and a half, time has lost all meaning.
Yeah. Every day is Sames Day. Yeah.
All right, so jump into this. Yeah, we talked a little Flash. I know a few years back, but I don't think we really dug into it. Yeah, I just wanted to get a lot of the background. Like you were always a big Flash fan even before you got the book, right?
Yeah, I was. I wasn't not like I was Superman or a diehard Flash fan, but I'd certainly read all the stories. I collected all the books, and I liked all the Julie Schwartz characters, the Atom, Green Lantern, Flash. And I kind of like Kid Flash. I kind of like Wally West, but I wasn't deeply connected to him any more than I was like, I don't know, Aqualad. And then so we became Flash. That was interesting, but I wasn't drawn into that character. And then, Mike Barron has a very certain style of writing, and he approached the book in a way that I read all those books, but it didn't really, his stuff didn't grab me. Bill Mestre-Loeb's stuff that followed after that grabbed me because I know Bill personally, and he's been a friend for a long time, and he's a really good writer. And so I was really starting to get into Wally with Bill, really.
So how did that opportunity to write The Flash come about? Did you pitch for it, or were you kind of handed?
A little bit of both. So what happened was, my best friend was Brian Augustin, who was the editor of the book. And I had left staff. I'd worked on staff in DC from 87 to 89, and I'd left staff. But he was always making sure I had a little work here, a little work there, as much as he could do. He gave me a Flash TV special story to do. And then he gave me the structure of the Flash anniversary issue that came out, special anthology issue. And then from there, I proved I could handle the character. And so Brian offered me the book, and he did it over the protestations of most of the staff, because many of them felt like, well, the TV show's been canceled. Why don't we just cancel the book? And some of them felt like, oh, Mark Waid, he's just going to make it into a Silver Age fanboy thing. It's going to be awful. So Brian, God bless him, stuck to his guns and gave me the gig. And we went out to lunch, and we plotted over lunch that first 4-part Born to Run thing. And neither of us dreamed, that 100 issues later, we'd still be in some capacity working on the book. But that's where it all started.
That's awesome.
I can't believe they were going to cancel it because of the show. Because
synergy, Phil. What do we talk about all the time? Synergy.
Well, that's when I first started picking up the book, like when the show started, and it was the Flash, but it was Barry instead of Wally. It was almost completely different. So
yeah. But they just, there was just, the book was doing okay, but it was like a low mid-list book, and frankly, it was always a mid-list book. No matter who took it on, at its height, we never outsold Green Lantern, which always made me want to put a gun to my head. And we can never outsell Batman or Superman or whatever. It's always been a mid-list book. But at that point, with the TV show canceled, the feeling was, it's kind of dragging. Maybe we should just let it go. I don't know how strong that feeling was, but it's certainly been voiced by some of the higher-ups there. So Brian took the gamble, and it paid off for both of us.
Just like you said about your first storyline, the Born to Run. Even then, were you thinking of the Speed Force? Because
no. The Speed Force came much later. I remember distinctly. See, the way I approach these characters, the way I approach these things, is I like to, as Brian says, wear the suit. Get into the suit, get into the characters, think like them, look at the world through their eyes, write about these characters from a very deep internal place. And so I'm always thinking about what would Flash do in this situation? What would Flash do in this situation? How would he perceive this? How would he perceive that? And I just remember one day out of the blue, it just occurred to me, I wonder what he sees when he runs faster than light.
Mm.
And I got on the phone with Brian and I said, there's something here. There's something on the other side of the speed of light that he could tap into. And it just became the Speed Force. Speed Force was always just a placeholder name. It was never meant to be called the Speed Force. It was just until we came up with something better, and we never did. And for a long time, it was obvious that we were just kind of knocking off the Force from Star Wars, but it seems to have gotten a life of its own in the last 5 or 6 years, or since the TV show, certainly. So I don't think anybody hears the word Speed Force anymore and thinks, oh, they're just knocking off George Lucas.
I mean, I don't think it's ever left the comics since you created it. And yeah, it's played a part in every season of the TV show.
Yeah.
Have you been watching any? Are you caught up
yeah.
on the show?
Yeah, every episode without fail. I mean, some of them are awesome, some of them are not as awesome, but it's done by good people. It's done by people who care about the comics, which is so important.
Oh yeah,
just so important. And it's always fun. My first season is always my favorite season is always going to be the first season, just because they didn't know that they were going to be able to come back for a second season. So you can see them turning over cards with every episode and doing. If they had known at the time that they were going to be on this long, I'm sure that first season would have become 3 seasons worth of material. But it was just every episode. Oh, we're going to learn to vibrate. Oh, this is going to learn about the Speed Force. Oh, we're going to learn about this. Oh, we're going to learn about that. Every episode was something like that, and it was so awesome. And I think that I think that Grant Gustin's great. I think the cast is good. I think that losing Tom as Harrison Wells kills me, because he was the best thing about the show. And that's not to denigrate the show now. It's just I so loved him, because even in that first episode, the way he delivers these lines of dialogue that are complete scientific mumbo jumbo, that in the mouths of most actors would just sound clunky, and sometimes do sound clunky when they're delivered by some of the other cast members. Tom Cavanaugh can make it all sound so dramatic and so realistic, and so, I just think he was just phenomenal.
Oh yeah, he could do it. It seemed like he could do anything too. I mean, he was a terrifying villain. He could be like, the bumbling idiot guy. Yeah, he basically.
Yeah.
What was your favorite thing to see come to life on screen? For me, it's the Cosmic Treadmill and the Flash for Two Worlds.
Yeah. Oh, for me, it was at the moment that Harrison Wells spoke the word Speed Force, somewhere there's a picture of me, a photograph of me in that moment, as I am just agog and over the moon with excitement, because it's something that I did, and it's something that I created with Brian, and it was being spoken on television. That was no feeling like that in the world. So there's been a lot of favorite moments, but that was by far the pinnacle for me.
And close second was probably your favorite villain, Abracadabra, huh?
I love the fact that they're willing to draw from my stuff, from earlier stuff, from Josh's stuff, from Jeff's stuff. I admit that sometimes I get a little jealous when I think, oh, gee, you're pulling a lot of stuff from stuff after I got there. What about my stuff? But that's whiny, because the reality is my stuff is 20 years old. And so there's been 20 years worth of Flash stories since then, and they're absolutely entitled to draw from whatever era they want to draw from.
And did you watch last week's episode? They brought in Impulse.
Yeah, that's when I watched live. I didn't even wait for the commercials to spool out. I just, on the DVR, I just watched that live. I love that. Is he the Bart Allen that Umberto and I envisioned? Not exactly, but there's always going to be adjustments. There's always going to be stuff like that, and same with XS. I mean, again, that's something else that I had a hand in creating, and so that was. Seeing the two of them together on screen is even more exciting. I
mean, they pulled a lot of stuff. I mean, even if just in name alone, I mean, what was it, season 3, Savitar?
Yeah. Yep. Again, there's nods all the time, and that makes me. That's one of the gifts that keeps giving, because the reality of the way this works, and this is not a complaint, this is an observation. And I knew what I was getting into, and all of us who do work for hire for comics and work on established characters know this. You're doing work for hire. You don't own this stuff. You can make up toys, and that's great, but I don't get compensated when financially when somebody says Speed Force on television. I get something for impulse, because that's a separate deal. But most of the time, as these concepts and villains and so forth show up, I'm not financially compensated, but I've made my peace with that, because again, I'm a big boy. I knew the rules when I was going in. So since I am not financially compensated, just the excitement of being able to say, I did that, I did something that outlives me, that has legs beyond my work. That's more valuable to me, frankly. If you paid me, a few $100 because you used Savitar, a year from now, I would not remember what I'd spent that money on, but I will always remember Savitar being on my TV and how excited I was.
Yeah, I want to take us off track, but I did see. Didn't you get a shout out that in the Black Widow credits?
Yeah. It's a Chris Omni and I both. It's nice to be part of that group. Yeah.
All right, let's get back to the comics here. I don't know if I asked you this before, but the return of Barry Allen storyline, was that always gonna go the way you had it go, or was there ever talks to be like, you know what, should we bring him back?
The origin of that story was, I was visiting my mom in Texas. I remember distinctly where I was. I remember the phone call. I called Brian. I had an idea. At that time, I wasn't working on Flash, but I was doing an occasional Justice League Quarterly story. And so as a Justice League Quarterly story, I thought, wouldn't it be cool to do a story where Barry Allen shows back up and everybody's astounded, and at the end of the story, the reveal is that it's Barry's grandchild, and he's come back from the far future to pretend to be his dad for whatever reason. And it was going to be a one story. It's a one-off. And we just kind of filed that away in the we'll get to that one of these days pile, and that just never happened. And then we started talking about what we could do to really juice up the book and cement Wally as the Flash for all of the nostalgic folks who still didn't want to let go of Barry Allen. What could we do there? And, that idea burbled back up again, and there you go.
Not to jump around.
So half of that idea becomes Return of Barry Allen, and half of it becomes Impulse. So,
as time went on, did you fall more and more in love with Wally West? It seems like.
It didn't take me long. The trick to falling in love with these characters is to find the commonality points, to find the things that are without warping the characters beyond recognition, and without going all Mary Sue on them. Just find the things in the characters that you relate to personally, that you can find a handhold on. And I thought long and hard about Wally, and the two things, as I started writing the book, the two things that struck me that we have in common are, first off, we're very impatient. We're very much, if I could have a superpower, it would be super speed. It wouldn't be flying. It wouldn't be heat vision. It would be super speed, because that way there's just not enough time in the world to do stuff. And with Wally, there is. So that was one. But the other thing was, Wally was the first sidekick to ever fulfill the promise, right? He was the very first one to actually take on the role of his mentor for something for permanent, in a permanent way. And he loved the Flash. He grew up as a kid loving the Flash. His whole origin is, I worship the Flash. All I want to be is the Flash. All I want to be is the Flash. And then boom, one day strike a lightning and he gets to become the Flash. Well, all I wanted was to be in comics. All I wanted was to be in comics. Growing up, all I wanted was to be in comics. Somehow in comics, and now and then I am. So that's what we had in common. We're both fanboys who made the dream come true. And once I got those two tenterhooks into Wally, once I sort of understood those two things about him, then it just became so easy to write for that character.
Did that come right away, or did it take a little bit of writing to figure that out?
I think it came a little. I think it came a little. The fanboy thing, I think, came a little later. Even in Born to Run, his relationship with Uncle Ira is very much my relationship with my grandfather, and the fact that he and I really couldn't communicate because when my mother passed away, we really couldn't communicate, and same with Wally and Ira and Iris, and that's kind of where that spun from. So like I said, that's use what's in your life if you can. Do it without making it all Mary Sue.
Did you find it daunting because he was that first sidekick to make the promise come good? Because you didn't have a template, you were just out there in the wild.
Exactly. That's really it. Just out there in the wild.
Just looking through my notes here. Talk Speed Force.
You asked me a question, and I will go on for 20 minutes. So I don't. There's no excuse for you to not have the next question queued up. I'm just saying.
That's true. All right, I would ask you. One of my favorite storylines was the Walter West storyline, the alternate version of Wally. Where did that come from?
Again, we were looking for a way to knock the readers off their pens. Brian and I both very much like writing monthly comics, and not monthly comics where it's a defined 6-issue story arc or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that, and that's how most comics are done these days. You're going to do one specific story, and the readers know from the get-go it's going to be 4 parts, it's going to be 6 parts or whatever, and that's fine. But there's some magic to not being constrained by that. There's some magic of being able to let a story breathe and take whatever time it naturally needs, because then you can surprise readers and they can't. I've always said with Return to Barry Allen, I think one of the reasons it hit hard and was successful is that you didn't know which issue it was going to end in. You didn't. So if you know it's going to end in issue 79 and you're reading issue 77, it's easier for you to sort of think ahead and start to predict what's going to happen next. I mean, we all know that, right? We all know that when there's 15 minutes left in the movie, we start thinking about, okay, here's how you're going to wrap it up. But without that bookend obvious, then you don't know. It's so you just really, everything becomes unpredictable. And same with Walter West. We were looking for a way to do something of some length that would make it all unpredictable. And clearly, I like replacing Wally an awful lot, as you can tell in the series, just as it goes on.
John Fox, yeah. Oh yeah, because you created John Fox. What was that? The anniversary issue, yeah. Yeah, I really like that character too, because he went on to DC 1 Million and all that other stuff.
It's cool to see him go on.
Yeah, but I did love that mystery of Walter West, because that's been on in a lot of books.
Yeah, it was kind of cool to see him used in other books, and I couldn't tell the other writers what the secret of Walter West was. All I could tell them was, here's how you need to write him in terms of how you approach him and his voice. But I couldn't risk telling anybody because we'd given a big secret.
Oh, so they did. So no one else, no other writer knew. Okay.
No, just me and Brian. That's it.
Wow.
So that's pretty neat to be able to work hand in hand with the editor, because a lot of times I feel like sometimes things come up and it's like, oh, that must have been an editorial mandate.
Yeah. No, Brian and I always thought like one brain shared between two people. We always thought alike. We always called each other up to knock ideas back and forth. And it got to a point where, and this is the God's honest truth, it got to a point where sometimes when I got stuck on a plot point, all I would have to do is pick up the phone and start to dial. I wouldn't even have to talk to Brian. I was just the very act of just starting to talk to Brian and making the phone call was enough to jog something loose in my memory. So that was good. And so he was the editor for most of the John Fox stuff, right? And then about halfway through that, I think that's when I convinced him to go freelance, because his kids were growing up. You work in New York, that means you're an hour and a half on the train each way, if you're lucky, every day, and 8 hours in an office. And, he wants to see his kids grow up. And Brian's a good writer, and Brian and I were thinking very much along the same lines. And I wanted to be able to have more time to do more stuff. So inviting him to just join me as the co-writer on the book was completely natural.
And
at that point, I think and I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm sorry. And I think at that point, I think Paul Kupperberg came on as editor for a while. He found us Paul Ryan, God bless him. And then after that, maybe Joey Cavallari. I'm trying to remember, but that's, we always had good luck with editors. There were never any intrusive ones.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That's what really the run feels really natural. Like everybody was just a well-oiled machine, and I think that's why the run really stands out.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh yeah, like Paul Ryan. Yeah, he's.
No, Paul was draw anything. Yeah.
Oh yeah. But no, you're talking about family, and then after a while, when you came back, I think you introduced Wally's family. Where did that come from?
That was, well, I mean, Bill Loebs had done stuff with his mom and dad, and made them distinct and interesting characters. And he'd done stuff with Chunk and other supporting characters. My memory of this, and I could be wrong, but my memory of this was that when he left the book and gave it to me, he asked if he could take some of these characters like Mason Trowbridge and Chunk over with him to Wonder Woman. So that's why his supporting characters didn't show up very much in my first couple of years, just because they were Bill's characters, and I thought he was going to do something with them, and that was fine. With Mom and Dad, I don't know. Wally is a small town kid, and so I wanted to get back to the family aspect of it. I also love the fact that Wally's parents aren't dead. I love the fact that he's not motivated by orphan revenge, which is a terrible, terrible motivation to use because it's so overused. So, I mean, that's where the family came from.
Well, that's the big thing. I always say it's like even Barry back in the day, his parents were alive. I mean, It wasn't until like recently where they had Reverse Flash go back and kill his parents. I mean, I kind of liked it just back in the day where he was like, well, both of them, I got powers. It's the right thing to do to help people.
Yeah. Do-gooders for the sake of do-gooders. Can we bring that back?
I know. I'm of two minds. I mean, on the one hand, I'm with you. I still think that orphan revenge, even bringing that into Flash, as a longtime Flash reader, kind of makes me wince a little bit. But I can't argue with the fact that they really have seemed to make it work for them.
Yeah.
And in a way that it doesn't feel completely gratuitous. I mean, I think Jeff really had a very strong idea of what he wanted to do with it, and I didn't like it at the time, and I still have my reservations, but that's not a knock on Jeff. It is the realization that time moves on, and by now, 7/8 of the audience of Flash, whether it's TV or comics, that's the Barry they know, and so I can't knock that. It's working for them.
I mean, I guess if nothing else, it really cements Reverse Flash as his arch nemesis, because before it's like, oh, I'm the opposite of you.
Right. Yeah.
But no, when I was asking about Wally's family, the idea for his kids.
Oh, the idea for the kids. Well, I mean, those were cards handed to me, right? Because that was during Jeff's reign on the book where the kids were born. And when I was asked to come back to the Flash, I was the idea that publisher Dan DiDio had was he really wanted the Incredibles. That's what he wanted. It's not quite what we should be doing with the Flash, but okay. But I'll give you what I can. So the only way I thought I could really the only way you can make children like that interesting in comics is if you make them old enough to have their own personalities. Mm-hmm. I could have written Wally and Linda and their two newborn kids or toddler kids or whatever, but who cares? I mean, they're not characters. They're just props, right? Mm-hmm. So if they're going to be there, why not make them characters? And so the idea that there's precedence for it, Bart aged super speed, so why not these kids as well?
Yeah, I found that interesting too. I mean, Bart. So, I mean, it originally looked like he was going to be Wally's, sidekick, but then he ends up going off with Max. Is it just the whole impatience thing? I think, doesn't Wally even say he's not patient enough to be a teacher?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the whole genesis of Impulse was that Brian and I wanted to give him a sidekick that he couldn't stand. We wanted to give Wally a sidekick where he and the sidekick just hated each other because they're too much alike, because they're exactly alike. And so that's where Impulse came from. And then, of course, once we got rolling, the character caught enough attention and became popular enough that by the time, before we got done with Terminal Velocity, they wanted to give him his own book. So awesome. That's great. But it changed the plans for Terminal Velocity completely. Because the whole point, the other part of bringing him in was to fake the readers out into thinking he was going to be the new Flash come issue 100. And once DC announced that there's going to be a new Impulse book, well, clearly, that's not going to happen. So that's why Jesse Quick plays such a huge part in Terminal Velocity. We needed a last second substitution for somebody who actually could be considered as, they're going to take on the role.
I mean, it worked. It seemed very natural. You can't tell. Yeah. Lilith, I feel like I'm dominating this conversation.
No, you're good. We're on the same page here. You should have sent me the list of questions, but we're on the same page.
All right, I'm going to throw him a curveball. I'm going to ask him the Kristen question.
All right.
Diggity dang.
Yes. My other co-host, Kristen, we were reviewing a few months back that Flash plus Nightwing issue, which we really liked, and she wanted to know the origin of the phrase "diggity dank."
It's a great question. I wish I could tell. I know we picked it up from pop culture somewhere at the time. I cannot tell you to save my life. Tell her to Google it. I'm sure we pulled it from some TV show or something. That's not the kind of thing I would think of.
Okay, so it wasn't originally from your brain. You got it from somewhere.
It could have been, but it doesn't sound like me. So my suspicion is we probably just took it from someplace.
Wow, I thought you remember everything. You don't remember that. Wow.
I know. It's I remember a lot, but there's a lot I don't remember. I mean, here's the thing. And this is true of all of us who write comics for this long and this often. If you were to do a trivia quiz with me, I could do great on everybody else's comics. But when you start asking me about my own, that's when it would start to fall down. Because it's not like I go back and reread that stuff with any sort of regularity. And the ideas are flowing and they're coming out so fast. I don't remember. So, I mean, one of the great pleasures of having the Flash run come out in trade paperback and having it all finally completed was every once in a while I would just pick up one of those trades and start reading one of the stories. It was like a new story to me. I didn't remember the story. Awesome. Cool. Hey, that's clever. Hey, that's pretty smart. Hey, that's pretty funny, Mark. That's pretty good. That was the experience I had reading this stuff.
Yeah, so you don't have like copies of your plots or anything like that on a hard drive laying around?
I do, but you
don't go back and go, ha, that was awesome.
No. Remember, I've written like 2,000.
Oh yeah.
So, or something, if not 2,000, very close to it by now. So.
That's what I was gonna say. I mean, I think is there anyone at Marvel and DC you haven't written any character really? I mean, even if it's just like in a team book or something, I think you've pretty much written almost.
I pretty much touched on everybody. If it's whether it's Marvel or DC at some point or another, I think I've written, even if it's just for a scene with a team book, I think I've written everybody at this point.
Because I know Captain America is your favorite over at Marvel. Is this and your favorite at DC?
And Superman's still my favorite at DC. With all respect to Wally, Superman will always be my favorite.
Oh, has Wally become number 2 or?
Oh yeah, Wally's easily number 2, but it goes. I think it goes to given on any given day. It goes Superman, Wally, Dick Grayson, and then it's like a 20-way tie for 4th place. So.
Oh yeah, I love Dick Grayson. But no,
Kristen will be pleased. We will send her the news.
But I mean, we and Lilith were even betting after Brian Michael Bendis left Superman. We're like, oh, Mark Waid's going to take Superman. Mark Waid's going to take over Superman.
Here's the thing. It's not like it didn't come up.
Oh,
see, I told you.
It's not like it didn't come up. I'm not saying I was officially offered the book, but it certainly was something that came up in conversation because once the publisher left, I was suddenly the blacklist that he had going for years and years with so many names on it that got burned. And so people were getting calls right and left. But I don't know what to do with that book as it exists now. I just don't. I mean, I respect that people like John Kent, and I respect that people dig him being married to Lois and The Secret is out and all this stuff. And that's great. I mean, I'm not going to knock that stuff at all. It's just not the Superman that I am comfortable with. That's not how I see the character. So if you were to hand me that stuff, I wouldn't know what to do with it.
So if you had your way, like you could do it however you wanted to do, would you like what, Silver Age Superman?
Well, not exactly. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, I wouldn't. I would never, if you handed me the monthlies, I would never rescind Jonathan, Lois, all that stuff, because that's an insult to people who have been reading the comics for this long. And frankly, Lois and Superman have been married since 1994. So almost all of our audience knows Superman only is married. And it would be sort of selfish of me to go, taking that back. Never happened. I don't want to do that. But there's room in the DC universe to tell Superman stories from before then. So we will see. Let's to be continued on that.
Oh, that sounds cryptic. Have you been watching that TV show?
Yeah, I was prepared not to like it because I didn't, the setup is not my Superman, but I really like it. I think that Tyler has grown into the role.
Oh yeah.
I think that when I first saw him on Supergirl, I was sort of underwhelmed because he didn't have a lot of presence on that show.
Yeah.
And no matter whether it's even if it's a Supergirl show, I feel like when Superman enters the room, all heads turn. I think that Superman takes command of any room he's in, whether he wants to or not, as a character. And Tyler didn't give that vibe on the Supergirl show, but on this, I think he's really sort of stepped into it. And I really like the kids, and I think it's a smart show. I enjoy it.
It's a modern Superman TV show. I was so glad people embraced it, because a lot of people still actually are iffy about that marriage. But it's that weird thing. It's like, he's been married pretty much my whole life.
Yeah, exactly. I think that at this exact moment, it may be my favorite of the Arrowverse shows.
Mm. And I mean,
I'm still a Legends girl, but it's up there.
But I mean, I think they've hit on like the good combination of like, good writing, and it's like it's welcoming, it's a good entry point for new, people maybe newer to Superman. But again, they're like adding in all stuff from the comics, like John Henry Irons, the Eradicator, all that stuff.
Yeah, they're giving good callbacks too, and then they also have that Smallville vibe too. So they're like really trying to bring like all the generations of Superman fans together. And I think that's what really makes that show right now.
The one thing that worries me is that I don't want them to fall prey to what I think is, as much as I enjoy the Arrowverse shows, what I think is a weakness of the shows, which is that after a while, all of them have 12 characters in them. And so suddenly every episode is like a 12-hander. Everything is, you've got to have a story for Joe. You got to have a story for Allegra. You got to have a story for Ralph. You got to have a story for Sue. You got to have a story for Iris. You got to have a story for Barry. And I want to see, I tuned this in to see Flash. The show's called Flash. I want to see Flash. And with Superman, you're already splitting the focus with Lois and the kids and stuff, but I get that. But I worry that I really don't want it to become like, okay, now we got to do a John Henry Irons story. And we have, he's got a subplot, and suddenly, the woman who runs the newspaper has a subplot, and, General Lane has a subplot. And that's my fear, because that's the way those shows tend to go on the Arrowverse. And I really, as long as they keep it as focused as they have, I'm good with it.
Yeah, I mean, at least on that show, at least only Clark and Jordan have powers. On the Flash, it seems like almost everyone has powers. Yeah, it kind of.
There's that too. Yeah, once everybody else in the cast starts getting superpowers, then that's another sign that something's off. Yeah.
Has anyone ever approached you about doing anything, like any writing for any of those shows, or?
No, I've never knocked. I mean, I know Eric Wallace very well, and we've been friends for a long time. I don't want to exploit that friendship by knocking on the door. And it's a completely different kind of writing. I mean, a completely different kind of writing. And so it's a steep learning curve to do that. It's not, especially, I mean, writing an episode of a TV show is not terribly different from writing an issue of a comic, but on a show like that, where there's so many, like I said, so many threads, so many subplots, so many characters that have to be serviced and stuff, that is, that I can't imagine how difficult that would be. So I'm good.
And if it's like in the middle of a season, are they like, okay, you're starting at point A and we need you to get us to point B? So it's like you have your beginning and end. You just have to fill up the middle.
Also, you've already told all my best stories, so I don't know what I'd bring to the table. You told the one where he's frozen in time. You told the Return of Barry Allen. You told I don't. You've already milked all my stuff. I don't know what I would bring to the table.
Okay, how about directing? I mean, we can easily get a Twitter petition going for directing. Just say the word, Mark. We'll do it.
I think you need to have some experience, and I got none. So I'm good as an audience. I'm good as an audience.
Okay, just let us know.
Thank you. Will do. Copy that.
What else do I got here? So I guess you can't say you were being cryptic before. Is there anything coming up soon, like DC or Marvel,
that you can discuss?
Nothing that I can discuss, actually. I mean, I think I'm doing a 8-page story with Jose Garcia Lopez in a Wonder Woman 80th anniversary book. That's pretty cool.
There you go, Lil.
That's pretty cool. I never worked with him, and it's a dream come true. But I'm working on other stuff. I wish some of it is just so far out in terms of, when it's going to see print that it's too early to spill the beans on this stuff. Sorry.
That's okay. We totally understand.
If I can get you back another day, we might have to talk some Captain America, because I was like, oh yeah, we're talking Flash tonight. Then I saw that conversation you had going on Facebook today. I was like, oh, I want to talk Captain America.
Oh my God,
it's not July, Philip. You know the rule.
Yeah, it's put out time into.
That thing on Facebook made me so angry. It made me so angry.
Oh yeah, I was angry too, and I'm just like, oh, it's his favorite character too over there. Oh.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. We don't want to get that's a whole. We can go off on that for like a half an hour. So let's stick to the topic at hand.
Is it just? I mean, just to keep it generic, because like even like Superman 2, it's like, I think some people just don't get the characters, and I'm just like, how do you not get? Just even people just being mean on the internet and stuff, or just.
It's the internet. They're trolls.
How could you read stories?
How can you be an internet bully and then claim that Superman is your favorite character? You have no idea. That's not how. Is that how Superman would behave? Is that how Captain America would behave? No. Yeah.
Red Sun Superman. I think they forgot to qualify.
Yeah.
No, I knew kids when I was a kid. They'd steal comics, and I'm like, do you read these things?
Yeah, come on. That's not what we do. I know. Did you not get the right lessons? I don't know.
Okay. If you get to if people only took one thing from your massive Flash work, if they can only remember one thing, what would you want them to remember from your time on the Flash?
Oh, that's a good question. I can't think of a specific moment. I think if they could only read one issue, I think it'd be the Zero issue. I think that would be the one, because that's the scene where he goes back in time and meets his own younger self. I mean, that again, driven very much from my own life, as I've spoken about this in other interviews, that that moment came from a time when I was driving around in Alabama, where I grew up, and I came up on the house that I lived on when I was about that age, and I was about Wallet's age at the time. Nobody was home, and I was kind of, sitting in my car outside the house. And at that moment, I wished for all the world that I could just get up and go into the backyard and find 10-year-old Mark Waid and just tell him, dude, everything is going to work out. Everything is going to be great. Don't sweat it. And that's very much where that whole thing came from. So if that's the one thing that you get to take away, maybe that scene.
I mean, so what you're saying, I mean, you have to have the talent, which you obviously do, but also like the big key to writing this stuff is like finding that personal connection.
Yeah, by far. Yeah, if you don't have that personal connection, then you're going to be able to the reader's going to be able to tell then it's just, you're just doing a crossword puzzle, you know?
I mean, yeah, I think we realize, yeah, you have that personal. I mean, just how many issues of Flash do you know how many issues of Flash you did overall?
It was close to 100. I mean, there was the break with Grant, but then again, you start filling in, you know, the Faster Friends crossover and the annuals and the, you know, the Speed Force issue and stuff. It comes out to about 100 issues altogether. Yeah.
And you probably have ideas for more, don't you?
I got a few more ideas, but I'll never do them. I'll never go back to write Wally, because it's a trap. It's just I mean, I did once. I went back, you know, with the kids and stuff, and the general consensus of fandom was, ew, this is not what we signed up for. Because I was trying something new, and they don't want new. They want it to be karaoke. They want it to be like, here's
guilty.
See?
But I am willing to, like, if it's good, like with family stuff, that's different, because I feel like, especially DC these days in modern DC books, family is the one thing that's lacking. Right. And so I like that particular thing. But like other things, I'm just like, I don't know, man.
Yeah. I get it. It wasn't what, you know, this wasn't what people wanted. And so it didn't work out. And the problem with, and I've learned this with other characters, the problem with going back and doing a character after you've had a run with that character is that fans are not, they'll read the new stuff and they're not comparing it to the old stuff. They're comparing it to their memories of
nostalgia's a drug
about the old stuff.
Exactly.
Exactly. So no matter, I could write the best Wally West story ever. Tomorrow, I could write one that's 10. If I somehow could write one that's 10 times better than Return of Barry Allen, people would still go, his older stuff was better. So, I mean, I'll never go back and do a run on Fantastic Four. You know, I'll never go back and do it.
Oh, you just devastated me.
I can do a story here and there, but taking over, you know, the book is just, that's a trap. The only reason I did it with Captain America was because Chris Samnee wanted to do it, and Chris Samnee was my safety net. Like, look, you might not like the stories, but who's going to complain about the art? It's going to be amazing.
Oh my God. I mean, that's the two books I could read for the rest of my life. You writing like Flash and Captain America.
Yeah. But you've gotten all the Flash out of me you're going to get, sadly.
I mean, is that
I totally understand from an artistic perspective, especially in the climate today. I totally get it. Yeah. Everybody's obsessed with nostalgia.
Yep, exactly.
It's like South Park and member berries. Yep, I got you.
I'm competing with myself. I don't want to do that.
I mean, is that the pitfall of, like, well, especially modern comics? It's like, yeah, you try something new, and, you know, some people might be like, ew, I don't like this. But then if you just like keep it status quo, you're not, like, you know, the sales aren't going up. So
it's just it's lightning in a bottle every time. You never know. You never know what's going to work. I mean, we thought when Barry Kitson and I took on the Legion and rebooted it, we thought we had something, and the sales figures were climbing with issue 3. They didn't dip like they normally do, but the fans the fans, what happened was they liked it, but then they saw the Lightning Saga stuff happening over in Justice League, which we weren't told was going to happen. And so suddenly that reminded, that fans are looking at that going, oh, that's the real Legion. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the real Legion. So this other stuff, this doesn't really count. And so it didn't click. There's other times when you relaunch stuff and or tried something new and it doesn't click. And then out of the blue, you know, you strike pay dirt with something like Daredevil, you know, and it clicks. It's just, timing is everything.
Pickles.
Yeah, and timing is everything. I could, you know, there's a world in which I did Daredevil a year earlier than I did it, and people didn't read it. Or there's a year where, you know, there's a world in which I did it a year later and nobody cared. It's just, a lot of it is just incredible fluke timing. And if I've got a good string of relaunches and runs under my belt, that has more to do with the fact that I've been doing it for 30 years than the fact that I'm any sort of literary genius. So the odds are with me.
All right, you mentioned Legion. I'm going to ask you a personal question here. Like, I've tried to get into Legion a few times. Where should I start with Legion? Because it just seems like when I try to read it, I'm like, wow, this is a lot of characters. You know, like we're talking like this, a lot.
But that's what's cool about it. I mean, that's the moment it's like six characters. It's not the Legion anymore. It's the the appeal of the Legion was always that there were enough characters where every character was somebody's favorite. And everybody knows that feeling of the band that you like that your friends don't really know about, or don't, you've kind of got that sort of inside track. They're my band, that's my band. The Legion has that with all their characters. That they have that kind of meaning for somebody out there. I started reading with the Paul Levitt stuff back from the 80s, back when it was really astounding. It was really great. The Silver Age stuff is good, but it's dated. But Keith Giffen and Paul Levitt's run is still the pinnacle. I think that everybody's got to somehow beat. So
I think we need to get you in some kind of public office, man. Anything you say, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense.
Good, thank you. Exactly. Good. Thank you. Yes. It's it's an acquired taste. The reason the Legion will never be big again, which is that ship has sailed. It has sailed beyond the horizon. And it's a shame, because it was DC's second best-selling book for a long time in the 80s. Titans, Legion, and everything else. Because it was a great book, but with John Byrne coming on Man of Steel, they had to change the continuity, and they had to change the continuity again, and then Zero Hour forced us to change the continuity again, and you've rebooted the series so many times that the great legacy of that book and the legacy of those characters is just chopped to pieces. And so people like newer readers will pick it up and go, I don't really get it. I guarantee if you'd been there in 1984, you get it.
Okay. I will definitely check that out. That's what I've always said. I'm like, is the Legion like they're the biggest victims of every crisis, right? Because
by far. Yep.
What was that back in the early to mid 2000s, when they had the cartoon and stuff? I thought they were going to get back on track, and then they never did. Never did.
I wish that cartoon had gone on for a while longer too.
Yeah, it was good. It was good, and people were trying to read the comic or watch the show, and
is one of the problems. I mean, there's way too. Is there too many books out there now? I love Batman. Batman is one of my favorite characters, but there is a ton of Batman books, right? A
ton of Batman stuff out there. There have been, and this is a statistic that will blow your mind if you think about it. There have been more stories told about Batman than about any other character in the history of mankind. Fictional character. When you think about it.
No, I can believe it, especially over the last 3 years. I can believe it.
I mean, sure, characters like Hercules have been around a lot longer, but how many Hercules stories are there really? How many stories about Santa Claus are there really? It's really by far Batman by far, to the point where in the 89, 90, 91, at that point I could still say that I'd read every Batman story that had ever been published up to that point. But there's a point at which it just became there's so much that I just can't do it anymore.
Every week there's at least one Bat book. Or
at least I at least 3 now. Seriously.
Oh yeah.
Especially if you include Harley Quinn and the Bat family and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I was gonna say. First, I was gonna say, what about Spider-Man and that? But yeah, Batman has decades on on
those characters, exactly. Yeah. And again, as many Spider-Man stories or books as there are at any given moment, there's still more Batman books out there.
Yeah.
We're gonna use that as a trivia quote for Charlie one of these days.
Do it. Which character in Western literature? Yes, exactly.
So I guess we know who sells the most at DC currently.
Yeah.
Well, used to be Superman, but
it's been Batman forever. It's been Batman since the movie. Since the Michael Keaton movie. That's when Batman became our best-selling character.
What happened to Superman?
We know what happened to Superman. The world just doesn't want Superman,
right?
As he should be.
A serious answer for you is that Superman, when you're a kid, back in the Pleistocene days when I was a kid, you like Superman as a kid because he's like a fairy godmother. He's like an angel. And then you understand Batman when you start understanding the concept of anger, because that's what, and what drives Batman. But you're not, when you're 6, you're not angry. It takes you a while to sort of get used to the idea or to get angry about the fact that there's injustice in the world, like really angry about it, right? Well, with each passing generation, that threshold has dropped. That age threshold just gets lower and lower and lower. So, kids now, out of the womb, they dig Batman. And great, awesome. I mean, Batman's a great character. I miss the days when Superman was the best-selling character, but he, again, like you said, it's that ship has sailed.
I think everyone like relates to Batman because I swear there's like every human being's like, oh, if I had enough time and money, I could be Batman,
Right, yeah.
And that's kind of the appeal and the point, I would assume.
Yeah, exactly. That if you,
because he's a human among gods. That the whole shtick, versus over Marvel. It's the thing.
You don't have to come from a different planet. You don't have to be splashed with chemicals. You don't have to find an alien ring. You just have to be really good at what you do. That's the appeal of Batman, right?
I mean, for Superman, do they just have to write him as like I think the thing I like about like the John Byrne stuff and like that era is like they kind of wrote him where he's like a normal guy raised in the Midwest. He just happens, he was born or conceived, however they did it, on an alien planet. That's why he has powers. Otherwise, he was just an average guy.
I cannot tell you how much I hate that.
Oh, really?
I cannot tell you how much I hate that. If you're, he has superpowers. He's had superpowers all his life. He sees the world in a different way every day. He has all these things he can do. How does that not make him different than us? I mean, people say, well, I can't relate to Superman. You're not supposed to relate to Superman. That's what Clark Kent is for. You're supposed to relate to Clark Kent. That's the secret of Superman's longevity, is that everybody, you talk about, everybody knows what it's like what it feels like to be Batman or whatever, but everybody also knows, everybody alive knows that moment when they think to themselves, if they only knew who was really inside me, if they only could see the real me, right? Everybody, whether it's, you're asking the cheerleader out for, the prom and they laugh in your face, or you're the librarian behind glasses and you're kind of, and you're not the hot girl, and you just, you want to think, if they just knew inside me, every human being alive knows that. And that's why Superman works, because everybody gets to identify with Clark Kent. If they only knew who I really was behind these glasses.
Again,
I like that perspective. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. You have any more questions for this man, Lil Hellfire?
I do not. I think we've kept him long enough. It's been really great. Don't forget to make him do the drop.
All right. No problem.
Oh, yes. Can you say, hi, this is Mark Waid, and you are listening to the Capes and Lunatics podcast?
Sure. Let me do it now?
Yes, please.
Hi, this is Mark Waid, and you're listening to the Capes and Lunatics podcast.
Oh, thank you.
You're right.
All right.
Before we go, I want to plug something.
Plug, yeah. Oh, yeah. Whatever you want.
It's not comics work per se, but it is something I've been doing every month for about a year now, and I'm astounded that I'm enjoying it so much, which is that there's a site called Talent Talk, talenttalk.com, and comics professionals once a month do a Zoom class. You go to Talent Talk, you sign up, and then once a month, whether it's me or, we all do it. I mean, we all, we're several of us working every month or whatever. Howard Chaykin does a lot of these, and Christopher Priest does a lot of these. But every month I do an online course where it's, okay, you want to know how to write comics? I'm going to give you everything I know that I can tell you in 45 minutes about how to write comics. And if you're a wannabe out there, if you want to be in comics, or if you want to be a storyteller, even if it's not comics, you just want to know about storytelling, I encourage you to go by Talent Talk and look it up and see if you want to join one of our classes.
That sounds interesting.
Do you have a personal link, or is it just Talent Talk?
It's just once you go to Talent Talk on the landing page, there's a picture of, Chaykin and me. You can find us really easily.
Okay.
Just in Talent Talk, that landing page. And some of the proceeds of every class go to the Hero Initiative charity, which is good. So, people seem to say they've gotten a lot out of it, which makes me happy.
All right, yeah,
I'll definitely throw that in the show notes.
Definitely, it's already wrote it down.
Thanks.
But yes, thank you, sir, so much for your time. I mean,
it's been such a pleasure.
No, my pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right.